Have you ever looked at someone and wondered if the mild-mannered person in your living room could secretly be a cold-blooded criminal? Take Walter White. He begins as the ultimate everyman, an underpaid, overqualified teacher living a perfectly mundane existence. Then comes the catalyst. A sudden terminal cancer diagnosis drops into his life and upends his daily routine. Psychologists identify this as a threat to self-identity, the precise moment a cataclysmic event shatters the facade of normalcy. That shattered identity creates a psychological vacuum, unleashing years of suppressed desires, replaced by a desperate need for control, recognition, and legacy. The terminal diagnosis doesn't create his darkness. It provides the ultimate excuse to let his deeply suppressed ego run free. This transformation begins with a psychological mechanism known as moral disengagement. This is a cognitive process where a person convinces themselves that ethical standards simply do not apply to their specific situation. Walter repeatedly rationalizes his entry into the criminal underworld as a necessary sacrifice. He tells himself he is cooking meth strictly to pay for medical treatments and protect his family's future. Moral disengagement acts as a mental shield. It allows a person to separate horrific actions from their personal moral compass, keeping their self-image intact while they commit crimes. Each justified crime makes the next, darker step easier to take. Walter builds an entire empire on a foundation of this persistent self-deception. Eventually, the focus shifts from survival to an escalating obsession with superiority and dominance. Walter employs instrumental aggression, the cold, strategic manipulation of people as assets or obstacles. He applies this logic to everyone around him, viewing them not as human beings, but as tools to further his own reach. This calculated manipulation feeds a deep-seated narcissistic need for validation. Every person he bends to his will proves that he is brilliant and untouchable. The meth empire has evolved into a terrifying, high-stakes mechanism built to reinforce his fragile ego and prove his superiority. Walter's final transformation follows a framework established by the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Jung defined the shadow self as the ruthless, cunning, and unapologetically ambitious parts of our psyche that we actively deny and hide from the world. Heisenberg is not a fake performance. Slipping into that persona acts as a literal release valve for decades of Walter's inadequacy and frustration. His shadow self completely takes the wheel when he declares, "I am the danger." He is finally acknowledging a truth he couldn't face before, that he craves power more than he ever admitted. We are drawn to this chilling transformation because it forces us to confront our own internal shadows, making us wonder what we might be capable of when pushed. The tragedy of the series is that Walter White was never born evil. He was slowly sculpted into a villain by his own choices and his refusal to check his pride. He begins as a desperate man fighting for his family. By the end, his drive is entirely consumed by legacy and proving he is the smartest person in the room. Villainy rarely announces itself. Instead, it grows quietly inside ordinary people, sprouting from fear and unmet needs until it consumes the original identity. If pushed to absolute extremes, we must ask the question, what terrifying, repressed versions of ourselves might actually exist? Understanding the twisted logic of villains ultimately helps us understand ourselves. For more psychological deep dives into the darkest corners of the human mind, subscribe and join the conversation.